All right, I'm going to give you a quick analysis of Toronto's residential real estate market. This is a deep analysis, but I'll make it quick. The first slide that I always share is new listings. So how many new listings became available? How would it compare to last year? How would it compare to last month? So we had about 18% more condos being listed comparing to last year, July. We had about 15% more freehold properties being listed. So we're getting more listings. On the left side, you'll see the same concept for June. We were getting more listings in June too. And then the next question is, okay, how is that corresponding with transactions? We are having less transactions on the condo side. We had 17% less transactions. On the freehold side, we actually had more transactions than last year, but it increased by about 3%, which is not as same as the increase in the number of listings that became available. For the past few months, we've been used to seeing a reduction of transactions comparing to the prior year, but to me, this is a leading indicator that perhaps things are changing a little bit, perhaps that supply and demand ratios are changing a little bit. It remains to be seen, but I will say that on the freehold side, we do not have as much inventory as we do on the condo side, and I will later show you the evidence for that. This slide is the sales to listings ratio. You're basically dividing number of transactions over number of listings. And that ratio will tell us how is the balance of supply and demand. The higher the ratio, the more favorable environment for sellers and vice versa. In this slide, I'm comparing 3 months, year over year, month over month for that ratio. And the point that I'm trying to get across is that if you look at, for example, May, we had 56% sales to listings ratio for freehold properties in May of 23, and then it went down to 42%. The same result was for June. It was even more significant. We went from 52% sales to listings ratio to 38%. So a very significant decline. But then in July, we went from 44% to 40%, which is less of a decline. And that usually the way things will happen is you will start by seeing some trend in the data indicating things moving in one direction or another, but it will show some early signs. And to me, this is an early sign that perhaps on the freehold side, things are getting a little bit more balanced as opposed to going directly into the direction of buyer's market. But on the condo side, we are in clear buyer's market. I mean, the ratios are very low. 25% sales to listings ratio is clear buyer's market territory to me. This slide is showing you the number of listings as well as number of transactions. So the bottom line is transactions, the top line is listings for freehold properties that became available in Toronto for the month of July. So I'm basically trying to figure out, okay, what is the norm for the month of July? Because each month should be, in my opinion, compared to itself based on seasonality norms. And then the next slide, if I divide the bottom line by the top line, gives me the ratios. And then as you can see, I mean, in 2013, we had like 65% sales to listing ratio, 73% in 2016. We were hovering around 50, 60, 65% plus for sales to listings ratio for freehold properties in Toronto. And then for the past few years, we were hovering around 40%. That's a clear indication that things are getting more balanced, but it doesn't necessarily correspond to a significant reduction in prices. Not at all, but 40% is the lowest, at least that I could find out going back to 2013. And that to me is more of a balanced market tilting towards a buyer's market where things are becoming, inventory is piling up a little bit. But again, I will qualify that statement by, it really depends on what market we're looking at. Each location, each pocket is different. Next slide is the same concept for condos. I mean, this is just a different story. We had 4,200 properties being listed. We only had about 1,000 transactions. So supply is picking up on the condo side. Next slide is showing you that we had a 25% sales to listings ratio. And I went back to 2013. That's very low. Obviously, there is the condo side is picking up in terms of inventory. This slide is showing you the average prices. So what is interesting to me is, yes, we had a slight reduction on the condo side for average prices. We went from 763 to 750,000. But to me, that's still surprising because I would have expected to have a higher price decline than that, given the level of inventory, prices for condos in Toronto are very resilient to me. I mean, obviously, we should have had a decline, but it's to me, it's not enough. That tells me that owners, sellers are in a position to hold them, perhaps offer their condo properties for rent, which is why we had a slight decline in average rents, but I'll cover that. And then on the freehold side, we went from $1.548 million to 1.54, which is not a significant decline to me. On the freehold sides in Toronto, we're basically at the same level as last year. And on the left side of the slide, you will see the same concept for the month of June. And this slide is the MLS house price index. It's basically trying to paint a universal picture in terms of price movement, because if you're comparing average prices, you're not necessarily comparing apples to apples. Sometimes you could have bigger or smaller properties being transacted. It could skew the results. This chart is trying to solve for that. And to me, the way I would interpret this chart is for single family properties in Toronto, we're basically at the same level as last year. For townhouses and condos, we had a slight decline. And this slide is the months of inventory. I calculated based on different categories. For freehold properties under $2.5 million, we're at 2.8 months of inventory. And for freehold properties above $2.5 million, we are at 8.3 months of inventory. This is as of August 6th. And one way to utilize months of inventory data is to compare it to another snapshot of the market. So this slide will give you 3 snapshots. We can say based on the data that inventory levels are picking up to a lesser degree for freehold properties under 2.5 million, but to a higher degree, I would say, for freehold properties above 2.5 million. And obviously for condos, we are at 6+ months of inventory, and that's a clear buyer's market territory. Moving on, I always like to cover what's happening with rent. So average rent prices for freehold properties was $3,400 in Toronto for the month of July, and for condos we averaged $2,800 for average rents, which was a bigger decline than last year comparing to freehold properties. And that's because there are more properties becoming available on the condo side for rent, as well as on the freehold side, but to a lesser degree. That's it for my update for the month of July for Toronto's residential real estate market. I hope you find the information helpful.